With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, the UN Security Council has once again failed to adopt a draft resolution calling for a permanent and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza after the veto imposed by the United States. Following the vote, Algeria's permanent representative to the UN, Ammar Ben Jama, said that the shield of immunity and impunity enjoyed by the Zionist entity must fall, adding that the majority vote was a message to the Palestinians that they are not alone. Today, nearly 2 million Muslim pilgrims converged on Mount Arafat in western Saudi Arabia at the peak of the annual Hajj pilgrimage. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Smani. The President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, chaired a meeting of the High Security Council on Wednesday. This was contained in a message or in a statement by the Presidency of the Republic. President Abdelmajid Tebboune has offered his sincere condolences to the family of the late Mujahid Mustafa Boudina and President of the National Association of Former Death Row Prisoners. In his condolence message, President Tebboune recalled the bravery of late Mustafa Boudina, who led a group of freedom fighters and experienced the bitterness of waiting on the death row at Montluc prison in Lyon, France. He added that the deceased passed away, leaving behind the memory of a courageous mujahid, a witness of the atrocities of colonialism, surrounded by esteem and consideration. The Minister of State in charge of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energy, Mohammed Arqab, has had a phone call with the Syrian Minister of Energy, Mohammed al-Bashir, during which they discussed ways and means to strengthen and develop bilateral cooperation in the energy sector, particularly in the areas of electricity production, transmission and distribution, as well as in the maintenance of electrical networks and equipment. The details are with Mohammed Khatil.
Emphasizing the strategic nature of this cooperation within the framework of the fraternal and historical solidarity uniting the two brotherly countries, the two parties welcome the privileged fraternal and historic relations between Algeria and Syria. In this regard, in accordance with the guidelines of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, it was decided to dispatch a team of executives, experts and technicians from the Sonalgas Group to Syria to assess the state of the Syrian electricity sector, identify challenges and propose a detailed action plan to support electricity production, transmission and distribution capacities, as well as the maintenance of vital electrical networks and equipment. Mr. Arqab also expressed on the occasion Algeria's willingness to host a team of Syrian technicians as part of a specialized training program organized by Sonalgas Group's institutes in the electricity and gas fields, as part of the exchange of expertise and the strengthening of local technical capacities. The two parties also emphasized the importance of intensifying and exchanging visits between experts and relevant companies and activating mechanisms for exchanging expertise and experience with a view to strengthening technical capacities and paving the way for the establishment of effective partnerships on the ground.
The Minister of Health, Abdelhaq Saihi, and the Labour Minister, Faisal Ben Taleb, met in Ljubljana with the advisor to the Slovenian Prime Minister for Development, Cooperation and Humanitarian Aid and President of the Danilo Turk Charity Foundation, Ms. Mojca Tus. Mohammed Khatil again.
According to a joint statement from the two ministries, the fruitful meeting held as part of the official visit of the two ministers to this friendly country, entrusted by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, allowed for an exchange of views on ways to strengthen bilateral cooperation in the fields of health, social development and humanitarian action, in addition to the central role of civil society in supporting public policies in social and humanitarian matters. The meeting also highlighted a convergence of views between Algeria and Slovenia on issues issues of peace, international justice and humanitarian assistance, particularly with regard to support for the Palestinian people and children victims of Zionist aggression, thus reflecting the shared values of solidarity and defense of just causes. Prospects of partnership between governmental institutions and non-governmental actors to create a lasting impact on development were examined on the occasion.
The death toll from the Zionist genocidal aggression against the Gaza Strip has risen to 54,677 Palestinian deaths and 125,530 wounded since October 7, 2023. The occupation forces resumed their aggression against the Gaza Strip on March 18 after a 2-month truce following the ceasefire agreement. This occurs at a time when the UN security has once again failed to adopt a draft resolution calling for a permanent and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza after the veto imposed by the United States. The details in this report.
In his intervention after the vote, Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar Ben Jama, stressed that the shield of immunity and impunity enjoyed by the Zionist entity must fall. Ben Jama underlined that the failure to adopt the draft resolution explains why the Zionist entity continues its crimes against the Palestinian people, particularly in Gaza, which is subjected to savage aggression, adding that the Zionist entity feels protected while the victims of its crimes continue to be buried without names, without identification, without headlines in the press, without investigation, and without accountability. The draft resolution proposed by the non-permanent members of the UN Security Council was adopted by the 14 members of the UN body, while the US imposed its veto, arguing that it would not support any measure that fails to condemn Hamas and does not call for Hamas to disarm and leave Gaza. The Algerian ambassador noted that the majority vote was a message to the Palestinians that they are not alone and a message to Israel that the shield of impunity must fall.
Awaken. The draft resolution that was halted today was not the voice of a few, but the collective will of the entire world, north and south, east and west. 14 out of 15 Security Council members. It was a message to the people of Palestine. You are not alone. You are not alone. And it was a message to the Israeli occupier. The world watched you. The shield of impunity.
Meanwhile, Ammar Ben Jama reiterated Algeria's unwavering support for Palestine, stressing that President Abdelmadjid Tebboune affirmed on many occasions that Algeria will never abandon the Palestinian cause.
Another beginning. As President Abdelmadjid Tebboune has affirmed, Algeria will not abandon Palestine. We have stood with it in its pain, and we will stand with it in its resurrection. We will return to this council again and again. We will return for the children who died before they knew what childhood.
The Security Council vote came as Israel pushes ahead with its offensive in Gaza, targeting now innocent civilians seeking food at aid distribution centers.
For his part, Palestine's envoy to the UN, Riyad Mansour, who thanked Algeria for her support, denounced the US veto of a draft Security Council resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire and unrestricted humanitarian aid in Gaza. Riyad Mansour told the Security Council the following.
We thank Algeria for mobilizing the Council with the full support of the Arab group. You've accomplished something. 14 votes in the Security Council is something very formidable. We appreciate that. We thank you. This draft resolution had a simple goal, demanding a ceasefire that would allow the beginning of the monumental work needed to end the horrific humanitarian situation, to stop the genocide, to release hostages and prisoners, and to get the Israeli occupying forces out of Gaza before they get a chance to implement their plans to destroy our people. The draft resolution also demanded an end to the engineered starvation that has brought an entire civilian population, 2 million people, among them 1 million children, to the edge of famine, and then used aid to lure them and confine them to an extremely limited area of the Gaza Strip, clearly to facilitate their expulsion and annexation.
That was Palestine's envoy to the UN, Riyad Mansour. Meanwhile, Hamas has condemned the U.S. decision to veto the UN Security Council resolution demanding an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, saying it was the latest sign of Washington's blind bias towards Israel. Hamas said that the arrogant stance reflects its disregard for international law and its complete rejection of any international effort to stop the Palestinian bloodshed. Hamas added that the move gave Israeli Prime Minister a green light to continue his brutal war of extermination against innocent Palestinian civilians. When it comes to the distribution of aid, Israel has continued to obstruct the humanitarian work of the United Nations in the Gaza Strip. The spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary-General Stéphane Dujarric said that the United Nations and its partners continue to send supplies to the Karim Abu Salem crossing, where the Israeli occupation authorities inspect them before they can enter Gaza.
We and our partners continue to send supplies to Karim Shalom crossing, where Israeli authorities scan them before they can enter Gaza. For today, we submitted over 130 pre-cleared truckloads for a second and final Israeli clearance, but only 50 of them, which were carrying flour, were approved to enter the Israeli side of the Karim Shalom crossing. Our teams on the ground are also working hard to collect supplies from the crossing point and bring them closer to the people who need them inside Gaza. But these attempts continue to face major hurdles. Just yesterday, one attempt was denied access altogether. Another one did manage to retrieve just over a dozen truckloads carrying flour.
That was the spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary-General Stéphane Dujarric. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Today, June 5th. The world is celebrating World Environment Day, a time to reflect on the importance of protecting our planet. This year's theme is Beat Plastic Pollution, which calls for urgent action to reduce plastic waste and save ecosystems. On this occasion, in a significant call to action, United Nations Environment Programme Chief Inger Anderson has said that the 2025 theme centered on plastic pollution mirrors a global momentum towards addressing the issue.
So ending plastic pollution is clearly a human health, a planetary health, an economic health, and a business health imperative. And ending plastic pollution is entirely possible, but we cannot lean back solely and only on recycling. Only adopting a circular approach across the full life cycle will ensure that plastic pollution stays out of our oceans, out of our soils, and out of our bodies. And that means that we need to rethink how we design, how we make, and how we use and reuse plastic.
Now stay with us for a special program dedicated to this global occasion by our colleague Masoud Sharfi.